They laughed at you. They doubted you. They called you crazy. But what if the one they underestimated is about to become unstoppable? This is not just a comeback. This is the moment the world finds out who you really are. Stay with me till the end, because this story, it might just be your own. It was raining, not just a drizzle, but a storm that screamed through the streets like a beast unchained. Lightning slashed the sky open, and thunder rolled like a war drum in the distance. He stood alone in the middle of the road, his shoes soaked, his shirt clinging to his skin like a second layer of defeat. Behind him were voices, loud, sharp, cold. You are not good enough. You will never make it. This is not for someone like you. The words cut deeper than the rain, each syllable a blade, each laugh a bullet. He clenched his fists. His heart pounded like it wanted to escape his chest. His breath was heavy. The air tasted like metal, burning, thick. He remembered the day he fell in front of them, how they laughed, how they turned their backs, how they wrote him off like a chapter that should never have existed. But something inside him refused to die. It was not pride. It was not revenge. It was something darker, something older. It was the fire that awakens when your name becomes a joke, when your dreams are mocked in whispers behind closed doors, when even your shadow seems to doubt you. He did not scream. He did not cry. He smiled, and that smile was terrifying, because it was the smile of someone who has nothing left to lose and everything to prove. He began to walk, each step slicing through the rain, each step heavier than the last. The road ahead was unclear, but his direction was certain. Every insult fueled him. Every rejection became his armor. Every failure became a blueprint. He stopped in front of the building where they once humiliated him. Lights flickered in the windows. Faces moved behind the glass. He could see them, and they could see him. But this time, he did not lower his head. This time, he stared straight into their eyes, the eyes that once looked down on him, the same eyes now wide with confusion, with fear. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the letter. Stamped, signed, sealed. They said he would never be accepted, that he would never make it past the first round, that he was wasting his time. But the letter in his hand said something else. It said congratulations. It said welcome. It said you did it. And in that moment, the storm did not matter. The voices did not matter. The pain did not matter. Because he had done what they swore he never would. He had become what they told him he could never be. He had stood where they said he would never belong. He had proven every single one of them wrong. His reflection in the glass looked different now. Not weak, not broken, but forged. By fire, by doubt, by silence, by nights no one saw, and battles no one knew he fought. He turned away, not to walk back, but to walk further, because this was not the end. It was just the beginning of something unstoppable, of someone unstoppable. The storm still raged around him, but inside, it was quiet, unshakable. He knew now that the loudest victory is the one you do not have to announce, the kind that leaves others speechless, the kind that echoes long after you are gone. He kept walking, into the night, into the unknown, with no map, no guide, only a promise made in the dark, to a broken version of himself. That one day, he would come back, not to ask for approval, but to show them what impossible really looks like. He would not whisper. He would not scream. He would only rise, until the silence became the loudest answer of all. He would only rise, until the silence became the loudest answer of all. And as he walked, the city seemed to shift, not because the streets changed, but because he had. Every billboard, every car horn, every flickering streetlight now felt like a stage set for him. He was no longer the outsider, no longer the forgotten one, the one left behind. He was the storm now. He was the sound that thunder feared, and every footstep was an echo of defiance. They remembered how he once stood trembling in the hallway, clutching crumpled papers, trying to speak, while the room laughed like he was a punchline. But they would never forget how he stood now, tall, still, unshaken. He had learned that victory does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers in the dead of night, "I am still here." He passed the alley where he once sat, back against the wall, palms over his face, wondering why the world seemed allergic to his dreams. He remembered the weight of silence, when no one called, no one believed, no one cared, and how he started writing on scraps, planning with nothing, building with pain, layer by layer, with trembling hands and a bleeding heart. He remembered the taste of rejection, bitter, like rust, like smoke from a fire meant to destroy you. But somehow, he had turned that fire into fuel, not to burn the world, but to light his own path. They thought he would break, that he would fold under the pressure, disappear quietly, like so many others. But he did not, because something inside refused to vanish. It whispered when no one else did. It told him to keep going. When even the mirror stopped recognizing him, he passed the park bench where he once made a promise, with swollen eyes and clenched teeth, that if the world would not open a door, he would build a house without one. He remembered how lonely it felt to chase something no one else could see, to carry a vision that made no sense to anyone but him. But now, that vision stood tall, solid, unbreakable, real, and they, the ones who doubted, the ones who turned their backs, the ones who smirked when he spoke, now watched in silence. Some would pretend they always believed. Some would say they knew he had it in him. But he remembered. He remembered who disappeared, and who stood by him. Not when it was convenient, but when it was crushing. He knew now that success was not about proving them wrong. It was about proving himself right. But still, proving them wrong had its own flavor. Sharp, sweet, final. He reached the top of the hill overlooking the skyline. The city shimmered below like it was bowing, not to a king, but to a warrior who never stopped swinging. The wind whipped around him, but he did not flinch. Not anymore. Because what is cold? To someone who has lived inside the freeze of rejection. What is distance? To someone who has crawled through doubt. What is fear? To someone who has already walked through their worst nightmare and kept going anyway. He remembered the moments he almost quit. How quiet they were. How heavy. Like the world holding its breath, waiting to see if he would fall. But he never gave it the satisfaction. Even when he had no strength, he moved. Even when he had no light, he believed. Even when he had no support, he stood. That is what they never understood. That success is not gifted. It is earned. In the shadows. In the silence. In the struggle. He had failed. Yes. He had bled. Yes. He had been broken. Yes. But he never stayed there. And now, with the sky cracking open above him, and the city breathing below, he realized something deeper. He was never meant to fit in. He was meant to stand out. He was never meant to be accepted. He was meant to rise beyond their limits. And as the rain returned, soaking his face, mixing with a tear he would never admit dropped, he whispered to the wind, "I told you." He did not need applause. He did not need permission. He did not need a stage. Because when you build yourself from ashes, every step becomes a performance. Every breath becomes proof. Every heartbeat becomes thunder. So let them talk. Let them stare. Let them wonder how he did it. He will not explain. He will only rise. Again, and again, and again, until the word impossible forgets how to spell itself, until doubt forgets how to pronounce his name, until history carves him in a space where silence was once his only companion, and the world finally sees what happens when you decide to prove everyone wrong. He will only rise again and again and again, until the word impossible forgets how to spell itself, until doubt forgets how to pronounce his name, until history carves him in a space where silence was once his only companion, and the world finally sees what happens when you decide to prove everyone wrong. Not for attention, not for fame, not for some shallow pat on the back, but because something inside you aches too loudly to ignore, something ancient and wild that refuses to be tamed. Something born from the countless nights you spent staring at the ceiling wondering if you were meant for anything more than failure. Something that roared inside your chest the moment you saw them laughing at your dreams, turning their backs, shaking their heads like they had already written your ending. Something that caught fire when you stood at the edge of giving up, staring into the void, ready to fall but choosing instead to fly. even with broken wings and bleeding feet, because deep down you knew giving up was never the end. It was just the door to becoming something they could never understand, something built from the kind of pain they run from the kind of silence that could break bones if you listen too long, from the kind of loneliness that teaches you how to carry yourself when there is no one left to lean on. And now, as you walk forward into the world they once said would chew you up and spit you out, you do not just walk, you glide. You command, not with arrogance, but with a quiet kind of power that terrifies people who have only known comfort. You do not speak loudly, because your success screams for you. Your presence shakes the ground they once stood on to mock you. And still, you do not stop, because this victory is not enough, not yet. Not when you remember the little version of yourself who believed in magic before the world tried to crush it out of you. Not when you remember the nights you stared at empty plates, the days you stared at rejection emails, the hours you replayed their words in your head like a poisonous loop. You are not good enough. You do not have what it takes. You will never be more than this. And still, you rose, not with answers, not with certainty, but with grit, with rage, with something unexplainable in your chest that refused to let go. And now they see you, and they pretend they always believed. But you remember. Oh, you remember. Every door slammed in your face, every fake smile, every time they told you to be realistic. And still you moved, one painful step at a time, with no spotlight, no safety net, no backup plan, just blind faith and a spine made of scars. You pushed through storms they never saw. You kept going when there was no applause, no cheering, just silence and doubt, and the brutal weight of starting over again and again. And now that you stand taller than they ever imagined, they try to soften your story, try to shape it into something easier to swallow. But you do not. Let them, because the truth matters. The truth is you made it because you were willing to hurt longer, to fail louder, to bleed deeper than they were. The truth is you were not lucky. You were relentless. And now you walk into rooms they said you would never enter, sit at tables they swore were not built for you. And still, you do not let it make you arrogant. You let it make you focused, disciplined, dangerous in the best way. Because now your dreams are no longer dreams. They are blueprints. They are battles won in silence. And you know the road does not end here. You know that the same world that doubted you before might try again, might wait for a crack, for a slip, for a moment to say, "We knew it would not last." But that is the thing about proving people wrong. You do not just do it once. You do it every single day. Not for them, but for every part of yourself that remembers what it felt like to be invisible, to be laughed at, to be dismissed. And now, your every step is a sentence. Your every breath is a declaration. Your every victory is a middle finger to the voices that once told you to stay small. And still, you do not shout. You just keep rising, again and again and again, until they stop asking how you did it and start asking how they can, until the word limit feels like a lie, until the idea of giving up becomes foreign to anyone who hears your story. Because you are no longer just a name. You are a symbol, a fire starter, a walking reminder that pain is not the end, that rejection is not a wall but a door waiting to be kicked open, that doubt is not a weight but a weapon. And when you turn all that pain into purpose, all that silence into sound, all that fear into fuel, nothing can touch you, nothing can stop you, and no one, not them, not the world, not even your own past, can deny what you have become. The living proof that anyone who ever counted you out never really knew what you were made of. And now they do. And now they do. Not because you screamed for their attention, not because you begged them to see you, but because your actions became too loud to ignore, because your presence grew too large to hide, because every breath you take now carries the weight of every no they ever threw at you. And you wear those rejections like armor, each one a reminder that you were not supposed to be here, that you were not invited, that you were not chosen, and yet you arrived anyway, unannounced, uninvited, and undeniable. And that is what terrifies them, the fact that you did not need their validation, their approval, or their permission to become something extraordinary, something greater than their expectations could ever contain. And you walk with that power now, not on stages or pedestals, but in the way your eyes no longer flinch when they look at you, in the way you no longer hesitate when speaking your truth, in the way your silence is now louder than their criticism ever was, because you have seen what it takes. You have survived what it demands, and you are no longer afraid of falling, because you have fallen before and still found a way to rise, even when the ground beneath you cracked, even when your hands bled from climbing walls built to stop you, even when your own reflection seemed to ask, "Is it worth it?" And still, you chose to go on, not because it was easy, but because there was something in you that refused to settle, something that would not rest until the world remembered your name, not as someone who succeeded, but as someone who endured, who fought, who never gave in. And now, every word you speak is a warning to the ones still watching, still doubting, still whispering behind closed doors, because deep down they know what you have built is not fragile. It is forged. It is formed in fire, in heartbreak, in betrayal, in loneliness, and there's nothing they can do to take that from you, nothing they can say to reduce it, because you have already heard worse, already felt heavier, already pushed through more than they could ever imagine. And that is your edge. That is your advantage. Not talent, not beauty, not connections, but pain, patience, persistence, the ability to be broken 1,000 times and still find the strength to get up one more time than you fall. And that is what proving them wrong really means. It means rising long after they stop watching, working when no one claps, believing when no one else does, and never forgetting the fire that started it all, because that fire is yours, and they can try to copy your moves, mimic your voice, wear your style, but they will never own your scars, never carry your history, never understand the weight you carry with such grace now. And that is why you no longer have to fight for respect. It follows you, like a shadow carved from war, like a whisper from the universe itself saying, "This one made it." Not by chance, not by luck, but by choice, the choice to keep going, to keep building, to keep standing, even when your knees buckled and your spirit cracked. And now, when they speak your name, they speak it with hesitation, with wonder, with a hint of guilt, because somewhere deep inside, they remember the things they said, the looks they gave, the moments they dismissed you, and it haunts them, not because you came back to shame them, but because you never needed to, because your success alone became the mirror they could not escape, reflecting every doubt they threw at you, every limit they tried to place on you. And you stood in that reflection unbothered, unbroken, untouchable, because there's nothing more powerful than someone who knows who they are, who knows where they have been, and who knows that their worth was never dependent on anyone else's belief. And that realization, that unshakable truth, is what allows you to walk into every room now with your head held high, with your heart steady, with your voice calm, not needing to prove anything anymore. Because the proof is in your presence, in your story, in your survival. And still, you rise, not to show them what you can do, but to remind yourself of what you have always known deep down, that you were never ordinary, never average, never meant to blend in. You were meant to shatter ceilings, to rewrite the rules, to turn your scars into stories that speak life into the ones still crawling through the darkness, to become the very thing they said could not exist. And now, as you stand on the edge of everything they said was impossible, you do not look back in anger. You look back in awe, not at them, but at you, at the strength it took to make it here, at the version of yourself who kept going even when every voice screamed to stop. And you realized that proving them wrong was never about revenge. It was about redemption. It was about becoming who you needed when you were at your lowest, about showing the world that doubt does not define destiny, that rejection does not determine worth, that one voice yours is enough to start a revolution. And you carry that revolution now, in your eyes, in your hands, in your heartbeat. And every time you move forward, every time you choose growth over comfort, every time you step into fear and do it anyway, you remind the world, and yourself, that you are not just a survivor. You are the standard, not the exception. And there is no force on earth more dangerous than a person who refuses to be broken, who has already been to hell and came back holding blueprints, ready to build something bigger, louder, greater. And the beauty is, you are just getting started. You are just getting started. And that truth burns brighter than anything they could have imagined, because now you do not just carry your story. You wear it like a second skin, stitched with resilience and sealed with the kind of confidence that cannot be faked. The kind that is not born from applause, but from ashes, from moments when the world turned its back, and you still kept your face to the sun. From nights when everything told you to surrender and you whispered, "Not yet." From days when you moved with trembling limbs, but still moved anyway. And now you understand. You see clearly that you were never waiting for the world to change. You were becoming the change, the shift, the storm that breaks patterns and cracks ceilings. And as you continue to climb, past the limits they gave you, past the lines they drew for you, past the boxes they built to contain you, you are no longer asking how high you can go. You are asking how far you can carry others with you, how many fires you can light in the hearts of those still stuck in silence, how many minds you can wake just by walking in your truth. And this is where it transforms. This is where it evolves, because now your victory is not just about you. It is about every person who was told they were too small, too strange, too weak, too broken, too slow, too dark, too loud, too soft. It is about those whose dreams were mocked, whose passion was dismissed, whose voices were drowned in a sea of mediocrity. And you become their mirror, their evidence, their proof that everything they carry inside them matters, and that they too can rise, that they too can shatter doubt, that they too can rewrite every lie they were ever told. Because if you can come from nothing and build something that echoes beyond walls and generations, then so can they. And your life becomes a signal. Not just a symbol, but a beacon calling out to those who are still hiding their brilliance behind fear, still waiting for someone to tell them it is okay to begin. And that is where your true power lives, not in your trophies, not in your titles, but in the permission you give others to dream again, to speak again, to believe again. And every time you move, every time you act, every time you create from a place of truth, you are declaring war on doubt, on silence, on every voice that told them to shrink. And you realize that you were not just meant to win. You were meant to lead, to lift, to blaze a path through the impossible and leave it wide open for those who come next. And that realization hits different. It humbles you. It focuses you. Because now the weight you carry is no longer just personal. It is generational. It is cultural. It is spiritual. And it is sacred. And even on the hardest days, even when the pressure threatens to collapse your chest, you do not give in, because you know the eyes that watch you now are not looking to see you fail. They are looking for the courage to begin. And that is why you never stop. That is why you wake up and push even when your soul feels heavy, because someone out there is living in a version of your past, still lost, still doubting, still hurting, and they need you to show them that pain is not a prison, that failure is not fatal, that being underestimated is not a curse but a calling. And you carry that calling like fire in your lungs, like thunder in your walk, because you have earned it. Every step, every breath, every second of peace carved from years of chaos. And no matter what comes next, no matter who tries to bring you down, no matter what challenges rise to meet you, you know now, deep in your bones, that nothing and no one has more power than your will to keep going, that no mountain is taller than the climb you have already survived, that no shadow is darker than the light you now carry. And you will move through storms and droughts and fires and floods, and you will still rise, because rising is no longer something you do. It is something you are. It is coded in your soul, stitched into your skin, written across every cell of your body. And even if the world turns cold again, even if they forget again, even if they try to erase your name, your impact will remain, carved in the hearts you have touched, in the minds you have awakened, in the lives you have ignited. Because when someone decides to prove the world wrong, not with words but with action, not with anger but with persistence, not with ego but with purpose, they become unstoppable, undeniable, unforgettable. And that is who you are now. Not because someone said so, but because you made it so. And no force on earth, no setback, no betrayal, no failure, no storm can unmake what you have become. Because what you built was not made of trends or shortcuts. It was built with scars and silence, with faith and fire, with discipline and dreams. And that kind of foundation does not break. It does not fold. It does not vanish. It grows, it multiplies, it endures. And now, as you stand taller than ever before, as you look ahead to the path still stretching forward, you do not ask, what if anymore? You ask, what next? And that is the greatest shift of all. Not just believing you belong, but knowing you are meant to lead. Not just surviving the pain, but weaponizing it. Not just proving them wrong, but teaching others how to do the same. And when your story is finally told, not by you, but by the lives you have changed, it will not begin with how they doubted you. It will begin with how you answered, with how you rose, with how you showed the world what happens when someone who is counted out decides to count themselves in, fully, completely, forever. And forever is exactly how long your impact will last, because legacies are not written in moments of applause, but in moments of resistance, when everything inside screamed to stop, and you whispered back, "Not yet." And you kept walking, not because it was easy, not because it was certain, but because something inside you knew that your footsteps were echoes for someone else's beginning, that your courage would one day be the foundation for another person's rise. And that truth, that heavy, holy truth, is what carries you now through every new challenge, through every new mountain that rises on the horizon, because you no longer fear the climb. You welcome it. You invite it. You chase it, because you understand now that greatness is not found at the top. It is found in the climb, in the blistered hands, in the lonely nights, in the whispered prayers no one else hears, in the tears that fall behind closed doors, in the doubt you stare down and defeat again and again, and every one of those battles shapes you into something sharper, something stronger, something more dangerous to the lies that try to bury you. And now, when you speak, your voice carries a weight no lie can stand against, because your story is not theory. It is testimony. And every word is backed by proof, by pain, by progress. And the ones who once doubted you feel it now. Feel the pressure of your presence, the gravity of your rise, and they will try to rewrite the past, to soften their cruelty, to pretend. They always saw the spark in you, but you know the truth, and you carry that truth not as bitterness, but as power, because forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It means understanding that their doubt was never your limit. It was their own, and you refused to inherit it, refused to live beneath it, and now you are free, truly free, not because the world changed, but because you did, because you stepped into the fire and let it burn away everything false, everything weak, everything borrowed, and what remained was something no one could deny, a force of nature, a soul unshaken, a will made of steel and soul. And now every time you show up, every time you speak, every time you move with that quiet power, people feel it. Without knowing your story, they feel it in your energy, in your conviction, in your calm, because real power does not shout, it does not brag, it does not seek attention, it simply is. And that is what you have become, a presence, a proof, a pulse that cannot be silenced. And your life now is not about avoiding failure. It is about walking straight through it with your head held high, knowing that even if you fall, you will rise higher, because you no longer run from pain, you no longer fear rejection, you no longer beg for space. You take it, you build it, you own it, and every step you take now is part of something much bigger than success. It is part of a revolution, a reclaiming of voice, of identity, of purpose, and you carry that purpose with elegance, with discipline, with unstoppable intent, and still, they will come. The ones who doubt, the ones who scoff, the ones who whisper, but you are no longer moved by noise, because you have heard worse in your own mind, and you have defeated it, because you have stood face to face with failure and said, "Is that all you've got?" Because you have learned that the only thing stronger than fear is faith, and you now live in that faith, not blindly, but boldly. Every choice a declaration that you are not done, not finished, not close to your limit, because you are still unfolding, still unlocking, still discovering how far you can go, how high you can climb, how deeply you can serve. And the world has not seen your best yet. It has only seen your beginning, the opening chapters of a story that will stretch across time, because people will speak your name not for what you accomplished, but for what you awakened, for how you made them feel, for how your journey reached inside their own pain and pulled them forward. And that is legacy, not just surviving your story, but offering it as a lifeline to others. And now, every room you walk into is brighter, not because of lights, but because of your light. Every goal you chase is no longer about proving them wrong. It is about proving yourself right, about honoring the younger version of you who never stopped hoping, even when hope felt foolish, even when dreams felt like a luxury. And now, you carry that inner child with pride, letting them See how far you've come, letting them dance in the places they were once denied, letting them speak in the voice they once had to silence. And that healing is its own victory, that return to self, that unshakable truth that you are no longer a question. You are the answer. And now, when the world watches, when it wonders how you did it, how you survived, how you rose, you will not explain, because your existence is explanation enough. And some things do not need to be spoken. They need to be felt, lived, witnessed. And that is what you are now. A living reminder that nothing is more powerful than a heart that refuses to quit, a soul that chooses fire over fear, and a voice that keeps rising even when it shakes. And that, more than anything, is what makes you unstoppable, because you are no longer seeking validation. You are seeking impact. You are no longer chasing applause. You are chasing legacy. And legacy is not measured in trophies or headlines. It is measured in moments when someone says, "Because of you, I did not give up." And that is why you keep going. Not because of what they said, but because of what you are here to become. And the truth is, you are just getting started. And being just getting started means you wake up every day with a fire that cannot be faked, with a hunger that cannot be taught, because deep down you know that what you are building is not temporary. It is timeless. It is relentless. It is stitched into the very framework of who you are. And you carry that with you. Not like a burden, but like a banner. Like a quiet declaration to the world that says, "I have been through storms that would have broken others, and I chose not to bend. I chose not to break. I chose to become better, not bitter." And that choice, over and over again, that quiet defiance against all odds, is what has made you rise above the noise. Rise above the fear. Rise above every lie they fed you. Because while they were busy doubting you, you were busy sharpening yourself in silence, perfecting your craft when no one was watching, working on your mind when no one cared to listen, building a strength no one clapped for. And now that you have emerged, now that the world sees what you were creating in the shadows, they want to know your secret. They want to bottle your discipline, mimic your mindset, steal your strategy. But what they do not understand is that there is no shortcut to what you have become, no hack for what you have built. It came from the nights you cried in silence, from the moments you almost broke but didn't, from the times you had to hype yourself up when no one else believed. And now that inner strength is your superpower, not just because it helped you win, but because it taught you that no external force could ever define your value again. And now that you walk with that truth in your bones, the world shifts around you. Doors open differently. People listen differently. Because your energy has changed. And that is what they feel. Your energy, your certainty, your clarity. Not arrogance, not ego, but the deep knowing that you are walking in alignment with something bigger than validation, bigger than revenge, something rooted in purpose. And that purpose is the compass that keeps you going when motivation fades, when inspiration vanishes, when the crowds go quiet. Because purpose is not a performance. It is a promise, a vow you made to yourself in the depths of your pain, a vow to never shrink again, never settle again, never allow someone else's vision of you to overwrite your own. And now that you live by that vow, everything you touch turns into momentum. Every failure becomes fuel. Every loss becomes a lesson. And every challenge becomes a checkpoint on the road to something even greater. Because the old version of you, the one who second-guessed, who played small, who waited for permission, that version is gone, and in their place stands someone forged in struggle, sculpted by solitude, powered by purpose. And that version of you is no longer asking for a seat at the table. You are building your own, and inviting others who know what it means to rise from nothing, who know the weight of being overlooked, who know the taste of being underestimated. And together, you are not just rewriting your story. You are rewriting the entire narrative, showing the world what it looks like when someone decides that the ending they were handed is not the one they will live. And that truth is what carries you forward now, with every step more certain than the last, with every breath echoing the fire that still burns in your chest. Because your story is not finished, your voice is not done, your mission is not complete. And you owe it to every past version of you who fought just to survive to now show the world what it means to thrive. Not quietly, not humbly, but fully, boldly, unapologetically. And as you continue, as you stretch farther than even you once believed was possible, you will start to see the ripple effect of your rise, how your words begin to lift others, how your example begins to set fire to those still trapped in fear, and you will begin to realize that the real reward was never the spotlight. It was the freedom, the inner liberation that comes from knowing you did not fold, that you stood your ground when everything inside you screamed to give up, and that you turned your wounds into wisdom, your silence into sound, your darkness into light. And now, that light cannot be dimmed, not by critics, not by failure, not by anything, because it was born from something real, and real power does not fade, it expands. And now it is expanding through you, through every move you make, through every life you touch, and you are no longer chasing success. You are chasing significance, legacy, truth, and the kind of freedom that can only come when you know, without question, that you are living as the fullest version of yourself. And even if the world still does not understand how you made it here, even if they still whisper, still wonder, still speculate, they will never deny your presence, because it is rooted in reality, built from the ground up with your own two hands, and there is nothing more powerful than that, nothing more undeniable than someone who found a way when there was none, who refused to become bitter, who refused to become silent, and who now walks not to prove anyone wrong, but simply to show what is possible when you never give up on yourself. And when you never give up on yourself, something changes in the fabric of the world around you. The air feels different when you walk into the room, not because you demand attention, but because you command presence. There's weight in your silence now. There's gravity in your gaze. People stop mid-sentence when you speak, not because you raise your voice, but because your voice carries something deeper than sound. It carries truth. It carries pain. It carries proof. Proof that you did not fold when it would have been easier to give up. Proof that you held the line when it would have been safer to run. Proof that you believed in a version of yourself no one else had the vision to see. And that belief, that quiet, relentless, unwavering belief, is what shaped you. Not luck, not shortcuts, not favors from people in high places. You earned this. You earned every scar, every triumph, every hard-won moment of clarity. You earned it in the shadows, when no one saw the nights you stayed awake, battling your own mind. You earned it in the silence, when all you had were dreams too loud to ignore and a world too deaf to hear them. But you kept going. You kept showing up, not because it was easy, but because something inside you refused to let the story end that way. Because even in your worst moments, a voice within whispered, "You are not done." And now you know, you were never meant to just exist. You were meant to awaken. You were meant to rise. You were meant to leave behind something permanent, not just in the form of achievements or accolades, but in the hearts you shift with your courage, in the minds you open with your honesty, in the souls you ignite with your fire. And that fire, it did not come cheap. It came from walking through every form of rejection, every version of betrayal. It came from hearing no 1,000 times and still believing in a yes. It came from starting over, again and again, from scratch, from nothing, from pain. But pain was never the end. It was the forge. It was the place where you melted down everything fake, everything weak, everything borrowed. And what emerged from that fire was something unbreakable. Not perfect, not flawless, but unbreakable. And now you do not flinch when storms come. You do not fear failure. You do not fear being doubted, because you have faced worse and won. You have stared into the emptiness of being misunderstood and kept moving anyway. And that movement, that refusal to stop, that is where power lives. Not in the spotlight, but in the shadow. Not in applause, but in action. You have become action. You have become proof. And now, when they see you standing tall, they only see the result. They do not see the war. They do not see the nights you collapsed but didn't quit. They do not see the tears that fell in silence. But that is okay, because this was never about showing them everything. It was about showing them enough to believe in themselves again. You are not here just to take space. You are here to change space, to walk into rooms and shift the atmosphere, to be the reminder that growth does not require permission, to be the proof that resilience is real. And the beautiful part is this: you are still evolving. You are still climbing. still unlocking new levels within yourself that you did not even know existed. Because greatness is not a destination. It is a mindset. It is a daily decision. It is waking up every day and choosing to be better than the version of you from yesterday. And even when no one claps, even when no one cheers, you keep going, because now you have found something deeper than validation. You have found vision. You have found purpose. And purpose is louder than praise. It speaks even when the world is silent. It guides even when the path is unclear. It fuels you when everything else has run dry. And the truth is, you were never crazy for believing in yourself. You were early. You were ahead. You were necessary. You were the shift no one saw coming. You were the answer to prayers people had not spoken out loud. And now that you are here, now that you are visible, now that you are undeniable, the game has changed. Because now, they no longer ask if you can do it. They ask how you did it. And one day, someone standing where you once stood, in the dark, in the fear, in the silence, will look to your story and find their strength. They will hear your voice and awaken their own. They will walk in your footsteps, not to copy you, but to find their own rhythm. Because you chose to rise, they will rise. Because you refused to quit, they will keep going. Because you proved everyone wrong, they will no longer need to prove anything to anyone. And that ripple, that chain, that movement, is how revolutions begin. Not with noise, not with crowds, but with one soul who chose to believe when no one else would. That soul was you. And you are not done. You are only getting started. And now, as the dust settles and the echoes of doubt fade into silence, you stand, not just as the person they once overlooked, but as the proof that quiet storms create the loudest change. This journey was never about revenge. It was about revelation, about revealing the strength you always carried. The fire they tried to dim, the voice they tried to silence. You proved them wrong, yes. But more importantly, you proved yourself right. You showed up when it was hardest. You stayed when it was loneliest. You rose when it felt impossible. And now, you walk forward with a new mission, not to convince anyone of your worth, but to awaken others to their own. Because the legacy you leave is not in what you conquered, but in who you became. So lift your head. Stand tall. Own your space. Because the world no longer sees you as the underdog. It sees you as the storm, the change, the reason someone else will not give up. And when they ask, "How did you do it?" you will smile calm, unshaken, and say, "I decided to believe in me before anyone else ever did." And that decision changed everything.